A very good evening to the members of Bhikkhu Sangha, pious yogis, and all the Dhamma volunteers. A very good evening to all members of Bhikkhu Sangha, pious yogis, and all the Dhamma volunteers. This evening, we shall discuss the specific characteristics of the four material elements. As you know, there are four kinds of ultimate realities, or Paramattha Dhamma. There are the four ultimate realities are rupa or rupas, material form phenomena, or citta means the mind or consciousness, then cetasika, mental concomitants, and nibbana. So during the practice of mindfulness meditation or vipassana meditation, we want to realize the true natures of the mind and its mental concomitants, as well as rupa. Nibbana is not an object of a mindfulness meditation. So five aggregates, in other words, five aggregates are the objects of mindfulness meditation. The first aggregate, rupa khanda, is one of the ultimate realities. And the next three aggregates, Vedana khanda, aggregate of feeling or sensation, or Sanya khanda, aggregate of perceptions, and the fourth aggregate, Sankhara khanda, aggregates of formation. All these are grouped under cetasika. And the vijnana khanda here refers to the citta. But when it's explained in terms of the doors and objects, then we have 12 ayatanas. So as you know, the 12 ayatanas are the eye, or sometimes known as eye base, Cakkayatana, the ear, the nose, the tongue, the body, and the mind. So these are the 6 internal sense base. Then the 6 external sense base, the visible form or visible object, or the sound, the smell, the taste, the tangible object, and the mental object. If we include their correspondent consciousness, then we have what we call the 18 elements. So, for example, when there's visible form or visible object comes into contact with the eye base, then eye consciousness will be arising. So these 6 consciousness are the eye consciousness, or the ear consciousness, the nose consciousness, the tongue consciousness, the body consciousness, and the mind consciousness. So this evening we shall discuss about the tangible elements. So these tangible elements refers to the material elements. As you know, there are 4 material elements. There are earth element, wind element, then fire element, and water elements. So during the practice of mindfulness meditation, we want to realize the true natures of Rupa that consists of four Mahabhuta, or the great essentials, or the four material elements. The characteristics of the earth element is sometimes is known as solidarity. But sometimes we can experience in the way of hardness, softness. And in the characteristics of fire elements or Tejo Dhatu is heat. And the characteristics, here characteristics means the specific characteristics or the individual characteristics of the wind element or air element, Vayu Dhatu is movements or motions. And the water element, or the specific or the individual characteristics of water elements is a fluidity or cohesion. But in accordance with the teachings of the Abhidhamma and commentaries, we can only experience the characteristics of earth element, wind element, and fire element. We cannot experience the specific characteristics of the water elements. We cannot experience the characteristics of fluidity and cohesion during the practice of vipassana meditations. So sometimes some meditators say that they could experience water elements during walking meditation or sitting meditation. But in accordance with the teaching of Abhidhamma and the commentaries, such as Visuddhimagga, we cannot experience the water element.
อาโปธาตุหรือธาตุน้ำได้โดยตรง
So here tangible elements consist of earth element, wind element, and fire element. So this is explained in the commentaries. For example, here this cup, there's a cold water in this cup. So when you touch the cold waters, what do you experience? What do you feel? Do you really touch the water, or what do you touch? So you may think that you are touching water, but in fact, what been experienced or felt is cold. But the commentaries say that there's no quality, there's cold. So we felt cold or experienced cold because of the sluggishness of the heat. So the commentary explains further with examples. If a person had been walking under the hot sun, so when that person come into a shady trees, then that person would feel cooling or cold under the shady trees. But if there's another person came out from the underground cave, as you know, underground cave is very cold. So we came up from the underground cave and went to that shady trees, he would feel warm or a little bit hot. So in other words, this coldness were not found in this water these coldness were not found in the water elements. If this coldness were found in the water element, then you will be found in the single group with the heat. Usually we know that a mental phenomenon, rupa, consists of 4 material elements.
ธาตุ
They are not separable. That means they are inseparable. But how when we say they are inseparable, here we can know that this is characteristics of earth element, or we can experience characteristics of fire element and so on. So the commentary explain further how although they are not exist separate from each other, but we can recognize them because in terms of access in their capability. Capability means that their power.
นะคะ
For example, heat is very dominant, very powerful. Then we could realize this characteristic of heat as the fire element. So similarly, we cannot say we experience this coldness in the air elements. Sometimes we say that we feel the cold wind or the hot air and so on. So this coldness is not the air element or the wind element. So the commentary explained that similarly, the commentary explained that we cannot realize the characteristics of the water elements, for example, the fluidity or the cohesion. So how do these 4 elements come together or help together? It is due to these water elements. Then the other 3 elements can cohere together. These characteristics of cohesion help the 4 material elements together. So we can only infer or based on our inferential knowledge that when we observe any material elements, then material elements also consist of the water elements. Just like the rice powder. When the rice powder is mixed with water elements, then what will happen? So it may become a lump. So then we say this lump is turned into or called earth elements. After mixing with the water elements, then turn the lump. Then we say that this is what called earth element.
Earth element.
Patavidatu. So these rice powders or the particles or the powders are held together by the water elements or apodhatu. And this lump also consists of the other 2 elements. Sometimes you touch it, you feel some warmth or heat. And this lump also supported by what called royal dhatu wind elements, because you can experience what called stiffness of the lump or expansion of the lump. The stiffness, expansion. Expand.
ค่ะ ขยาย
So when we observe this lump, then we can only experience 3 kinds of elements Patavi Dhatu, Tejo Dhatu, and Vayu Dhatu. But the Apo Dhatu, water element, is known inferentially because all these materials are held together because due to this cohesion, the characteristic of cohesion. These characteristics of cohesion is a water element. So the commentary explained that for those who hold the opinion that fluidity in the water element that can be cognized or apprehended by touching is only a misconception. We can know this. We can perceive or experience Patavi Dhatu or Tejo Dhatu, Vayu Dhatu because due to this body consciousness or Potapa Vijnana. Potapa means contact, or that can be sensed or can be sensed by the mind or the consciousness. In other words, we can sense it directly, we can experience it directly, but we cannot sense the water element directly or experience the water element directly. We can only know water elements by inferencing. So the ancient teachers say that three elements are coexisting with fluidity together form what constitutes a tangible. Tangible means potapa dhatu, a tangible element.
Only three.
Constitute a tangible elements. Then, so if a person say that or think that I succeed in touching this fluidity, it is a common misconception in the world. Then it's no different with the man who touches the element and then apprehends a shape in his mind. A shape or form in his mind.
ผู้ที่สัมผัสhe touched the
elements.
The elements.
Elements mean the tangible elements means the rupa. Then he's like apprehend a shape in his mind. For example, when you touch the wood here, when you say, definitely you say, I feel hard, I experience hardness. But do you think there's a shape of this hardness? Actually, no shape. You see the shape is only due to the concept, seeing this piece of wood.
ทางโลก
So, to those who think they can touch or come to contact with fluidity, is a misconception. So the commentary say, as a man who touches the tangible elements and apprehends a shape with his mind, fancy that or thinking that I've been touching the shape. So too, this fluidity is recognized or identified by those who have misconceptions. So during the practice of vipassana meditation, mindfulness meditation, only these three kinds of tangible elements, it means these tangible elements refers to Patavi Dhatu, Apo Dhatu, Patavi Dhatu, Tejo Dhatu, and Vayu Dhatu. It is because during the practice of mindfulness meditation, vipassana meditation, we want to realize their true nature. For example, in terms of their characteristics, their manifestations, proximate cause, functions. We cannot realize the specific or individual characteristics of these three kinds of elements by seeing with the eyes or by hearing with the ears. We can only realize their true nature by through direct experience or personal experience. So if we want to realize their true nature, then we have to be mindful of them as they really occur. When the mindfulness and concentration are not yet strong enough, then meditators cannot realize their characteristics clearly. Meditators might have the idea that the leg is moving, the arm is bending, the body is moving, and so on. Meditators cannot go beyond the concept immediately. But when they are mindful of any movements, as an example, they should put forth enough effort to perceive the movements as it really occurs. For example, when you're mindful of the lifting up of the heel, you need to put enough effort to realize there's upward movements or there's a lifting process. You should not focus your attention on the physical heel. For example, when you're mindful of your daily activities, such as lifting up your hand, or when you're paying homage as you're mindful of bowing down, you have to put forth enough effort to know there's the movements of lifting, or to know there's the movements of bowing down. If you focus the attention on your back while bowing down, then you may not able to perceive the movements clearly. If you focus your attention very attentively on the body at the place, sometimes you may feel some sensation at the point of focusing. For example, you focus your attention attentively, strongly on the back at the place, then you may feel some sensation there. In that way, you may not able to realize or experience the movements precisely. So, whenever meditators are mindful of any process movements, they may have to make mental labeling. But mental labeling is not mindfulness meditation, it's not meditation. So meditators should not pay attention of the labeling or the words or the name of the object. Meditators should mindful of the object that they label. Mindfulness here means the attention of the mind at that present moment.
Focus.
Attention. That means you pay attention. For example, when you know that there's lifting movements, you pay attention to that process of lifting movements until the end of the lifting movements. You are actually practicing mindfulness or developing mindfulness. So the mind or the consciousness has the characteristics to know or to cognize, or to know or to cognize or to sense something is arising in the mind or in the body. But it's because without mental training, then the mind has the nature of wandering, thinking. It does not stay at the present moment. So meditators have to train the mind to stay at the present moment. So to stay in the present moment, meditators have to direct the mind or lead the mind to an object at that moment. In other words, meditators have to give the mind an object at that present moment. So when there's an object, then the mind has work to do, or that's to mindful or to pay attention to that process or object as it duly occurs. If there's no object, then the mind may go back to the habit of thinking, wandering, daydreaming, and so on. So meditators have to put forth effort to lead the mind to the object, especially at the beginnings of the retreats and when mindfulness is not matured. So when there's a progress of mindfulness, meditators may come to realize sometimes the mindfulness goes to one object, a clear object by itself. If the mindfulness is getting stronger, meditators would realize the true nature of the object clearly, as well as the process of mindfulness. In this meditation, meditators might have to mindful of many process movements, especially during walking meditation and daily activities. During walking meditation, meditators have to mindful of the movements of the foot, left, right, then increasing the object gradually, for example, to lifting, pushing, dropping, or lifting, raising, pushing, dropping, whilst standing at the end of walking path. He might first standing, then turning. All these are what called wind elements or manifestation of wind element. So meditators have to realize, for example, lifting movements is an object, pushing movements is another object, dropping movements is another object. In other words, they are considered three separate processes of movements. They are not one continuous movement. So when meditators realize or becoming aware there's lifting movements, then they can mindful and know it. When the process of lifting movements ended, meditators cannot mindful anymore. We can say that the process of mindfulness also comes to end. So when there's a pushing movements, then there's another process of mindfulness arising, note the pushing movements. But sometimes some meditators exercise a strong control of that process of mindfulness. When the lifting movements ended, meditators still keep the mindfulness there and continue to note the next pushing movements. When pushing movements ended, meditators still hold the mindfulness there and then continue to note the dropping movements. So in that way, meditators could not realize the true natures of the process of mindfulness. So meditators have to realize there's no single process of mindfulness that have been mindful and noting various process of movements and other phenomena. It's quite different from samatha meditations. In the practice of samatha meditation, you may you may realize there's a single mind, concentrate on a single object all the time. So samatha meditators cannot realize the arising and passing away of the mind. But in the practice of mindfulness meditation, in meditators practicing the four foundations of mindfulness correctly, they also come to realize that mindfulness is a mental process that has the nature of arising and passing away. So when meditators put forth effort, then they have to mindful many processes of movements during daily activities. When the mindfulness and concentration are not strong enough, meditators could not perceive the intention clearly, or sometimes could not see any intention. So meditators have to slow down the movements gradually, so that the mind can follow the movements well and precisely. Whenever there's a touching or contact with another tangible object, meditators should mindful and note the touching as well, or touching. So when meditators are able to mindful of every process of movements precisely, then eventually they could realize that every process movements is preceded by the mind, in other words, the intention. So when meditators are able to realize movements or various processes of movements clearer and clearer, they would also come to realize the characteristics of earth element, fire element clearly. So meditators have to strengthen the power of mindfulness, so that the mindfulness is getting more and more attentive, energetic and precise. So here, to strengthen the mindfulness, meditators have to make use of the mental noting or mental labeling. Sometimes meditators need not have to mentally say the name of the object. Sometimes meditators may not have to mentally say the name of the object or make labeling. For example, you hear someone drop something on the floor. That sound is very brief. You may not able to make a labeling because the sound appear and disappear very quick. Then you should mindful of the next object. Sometimes meditators mindful of the dropping movements during the walking meditation. They have not yet make labeling dropping. They only perceive there's a touching. Then they should mindful the touching. For experienced meditators, if their perceptions are getting stronger, then the mind will note the object quite naturally or automatically. But as long as the mindfulness is still weak and concentration is not yet deep enough, meditators may have to make mental labeling whenever it's possible. So this mental noting is related to one of the mental factors that is known as perception or sanya. So when you have put forth enough effort in the practice and the mindfulness alert and have accumulated much experiences in the practice, you shall be able to perceive the arising of the object very instantly.
disappear also.
You should perceive the arising object very instantly. For example, when there's the lifting movements, as well as there's a little bit of lifting movements, meditators could perceive it immediately. But if the effort is not enough, meditators also could not perceive the movements clearly at the beginning of the movements. So meditators have to put forth enough effort so that the mind is very alert to the arising of the object. So when meditators are practicing well, they will come to realize that the consciousness of the mind has the characteristic of cognizing or knowing the physical phenomena. But the physical phenomena does not have the characteristics to know or to cognize. Then meditators also come to realize that the arising of mindfulness dependent on the physical phenomena. For example, when there's a perception of hot, then meditators come to realize the mindfulness arising. For example, there's a perception of hot, then meditators come to realize that the mindfulness arising and not hot. When that phenomenon hot disappear, the mindfulness also disappear. So the mindfulness is always arising dependent on the object. Even the intention, or sometimes meditators can see the intention. Intention is also an object of mindfulness. So this intention is a mental process. Because there's a arising of intention, then there's a arising of mindfulness, noting that intention. So if there's no intention, then the mindfulness cannot arise. Meditators cannot make any mental noting. So during the practice of mindfulness meditation, the immediate task or the responsibility of the meditators is to strengthen the power of mindfulness. We always emphasize that the mindfulness should be attentive, energetic, and precise. Then meditators should be striving to ensure that the mindfulness becoming more and more constant and continuous for a longer and longer period of time. The first important factor to make progress is to mindful of whatever mental state that's arising at that present moment. If there's a thinking mind arising and meditators know it once or twice, then they bring the mindfulness back, for example, to the basic object of sitting meditation again, then they could not realize the true nature of the thinking mind. So it's important to realize the true nature of thinking mind. Similarly, when meditators feel sluggish or drowsy, meditators should be mindful and note their mental state immediately. If meditators can mindful and note well whatever mental state that's arising at that moment, eventually the mental states such as thinking, drowsiness, sleepiness will be getting less and less, weaker and weaker. Then the mindfulness and concentration will become better and better. So when meditators could mindful and note the mental state very well, then there's a sign of progress. if meditators do not know the mental state well, then they could not make more progress. So meditators have to be mindful and note from one object to next object, from one movement to next movement.
ไป
Meditators need not have to search for the experience or find out the experience. For example, as you are mindful of eating your breakfast, as you mindful of lifting up of the spoon, open your mouth, putting in the spoon, taking out the spoon, and so on. Then you do not have to purposely find out whether the food is hard or soft, and so on. You may mindful of the chewing movements as it is, chewing. Then you come to sense, for example, softness food directly. Then you can mindful and note soft, and so on. Similarly, during walking meditation, some meditators are mindful of the dropping movement of the foot. Then they start to feel the floor, whether the floor is hard or soft or smooth or cold or hot. When you purposely do it, then you are actually searching for the experience. You are no longer mindful as it is. So when we practice mindfulness meditations, we want to gain the experience directly, not through searching or looking for it. So constant and continuous mindfulness is important. That's why meditators have to put a lot of effort in the mindfulness of daily activities. When meditators can make progress in the mindfulness of daily activities, most likely they also could make progress in walking and sitting meditation and realizing better results. So meditators also have to observe normal silence and restraining their eyes from looking here and there. If meditators could not restrain the eyes, then the mind always goes outside to the sense object, and then the mind may become more restless. So in order to realize the true nature of the mental physical phenomena, meditators need to put forth enough effort to practice. So when meditators realize the true nature of mental physical phenomena, first of all, they realize their individual characteristics or sabhava lakkhana. They only be able to realize samayana lakkhana, their common characteristics. So that realization gives rise to wisdoms of panya. This panya eventually enable you to uproot the mental defilements and attain enlightenment. So I wish all meditators striving diligently to develop mindfulness constantly, continuously, so that you could gain deeper concentration and penetrative wisdoms and uproot your mental defilements and realizing the Four Noble Truths soon.